resterai toujours Paris, la plus belle ville du monde.
Paris will always be Paris, the most beautiful city in the world, sang Maurice Chevalier in 1939. History until today has proven him right. And yet Paris should not have survived the war. Hitler had ordered, yelled and screamed repeatedly, Paris must be wiped off the map. This is what we avoided. Paris reduced to ashes and rubble. A tragedy that was announced and yet which never happened. For during the 16 fateful days in which the City of Light freed itself from the Nazi yoke, a handful of men on various sides refused to accept the inevitable. Resistance, communists or Gaullists, Allied and German officers, they disobeyed to save Paris. In Paris in early August 1944, the situation is tenser than at any point during the occupation. The front is getting inexorably closer, and the Wehrmacht soldiers are on edge. Apart from collaborationist circles, the Parisians have mostly stayed away from the Germans who parade through the city as if they own it. They avoid them, and if forced to approach them, pretend not to see them. To the extent that the Wehrmacht soldiers call Paris die Stede ohne Blick, the city with no regard. Every evening, ears are pressed to radios, where Radio Londres broadcasts coded personal messages to the resistance.
Andromaque uses lavender perfume. We say it twice. Frederick was king of Prussia. The elephant has broken a tusk. Atterley is in ecstasy. We repeat, Atterley.
What do these strange phrases mean? Religiously recited day after day for 4 years, increasingly so since the D-Day landings. What do they foretell if not the Germans' imminent defeat? After all, they're preceded by 4 notes taken from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. 3 dots and a dash, in Morse code representing a V. V for victory. There is no doubt the resistance will soon rise from the shadows. And for the time being, the Parisians continue to do what they've been doing for 4 years. Wait. But not everyone is content to wait. Raoul Nordling is the Swedish consul in Paris. Sweden has been neutral throughout the war, enabling Nordling to maintain normal diplomatic relations with Nazi Germany. But Consul Nordling has no sympathy for the Germans. He is Swedish, but he was born in Paris, where he has always lived. Nordling is French in his heart, a humanist and a fervent pacifist. Since the beginning of the occupation, he has constantly intervened with the German authorities for the release of prisoners, with little success. Most of his dealings are with Otto Abetz, the Reich's ambassador in occupied France. He's an intellectual, He speaks perfect French and collects works of art, many of which belonged to now deported French Jews.
Mr. Ambassador, you cannot continue to do nothing. We both know in what conditions civilians are being held. In Drancy, in Fresnes, in the La Santé prison. At least do it in your own interest. It will soon be your turn to ask for humane and dignified treatment. Believe me, it's over.
You must understand, Consul, that I'm not rejecting your demand. Neither am I accepting it. Get in touch with Secretary Hoffman. He will handle the case.
As he leaves Ottawa-Betz, Raoul Nordling crosses paths with a general he doesn't yet know. Dietrich von Choltitz has just arrived in Paris. Two days previously, von Choltitz had taken a train to Berlin, summoned by Adolf Hitler, who wanted to meet him personally before entrusting him with a mission of the highest importance. Since the D-Day landings 2 months ago, the general has been on the Normandy front. He's convinced the German army won't be able to hold out much longer against the formidable onslaught inflicted by the Anglo-American allies. And yet the general is a hardened veteran, one of the toughest and most resolute. He's seen every campaign since Czechoslovakia was annexed in 1938. In May 1940, he seized control of Rotterdam after aerial bombardments of unprecedented intensity, killing 800 civilians and making 80,000 more homeless. In 1941, he was at Sebastopol. He ordered the city to be bombed, showing no pity whatsoever for its inhabitants. In February 1944, he was in Italy, at Monte Cassino. In June, in Normandy. And on August 7th, in a Polish bunker, face to face with Adolf Hitler. In his memoirs, he wrote,
I saw an old man, stooped and bloated, his hair grey and thinning, trembling, a physical ruin. I'd been told I shouldn't shake his hand too vigorously. It was hurting him after a wound incurred during the attack. I carefully placed my right hand in his. The kindly regard he gave me was the only sign of humanity at this grave hour.
Hitler embarks on an hysterical monologue. For 45 minutes, he describes the 1,000-year Reich that he has wanted to build for Germany. He speaks to an imaginary crowd, haranguing them from his pulpit. He talks of the natural superiority of the German soldier. He outlines his great counteroffensive, which will repel the Reich's enemies beyond the seas. He then reflects on the attack he has just survived. He's screaming and ranting now, his eyes bulging, literally foaming at the mouth.
There was no longer any doubt. I was in the presence of a madman. The awareness that our people's existence was in the hands of a lunatic, incapable of mastering the situation, merely yielding to his deluded inspiration, weighed on me unbearably. Up to that point, not a single word had been said about my future mission.
The mission orders that Hitler finally gives von Choltitz give him authority not only over all the German soldiers stationed in Paris, but also over the SS, the Gestapo, the Nazi Party representatives, and the civil authorities. In his madness, what fate is Hitler reserving for the City of Light? General von Choltitz knows none of the men in his staff. who have set up camp in the Hotel Meurice on the Rue de Rivoli.
Hitler. Officier d'ordonnance Wilfried, dat was al mijn generaal.
So, Wilfried, how is life in Paris?
Picard est un peu l'endroit.
His men, for the most part, have no real experience of war.
Franc-tireur? Gros problème?
The Wehrmacht has no more than 2,000 soldiers to defend Paris. They're badly armed, undertrained, and have little motivation. Old-timers called up to guard munitions dumps, or youngsters, barely out of school. As for their weapons, there are a few anti-aircraft batteries, 17 armored cars, and a cannon dating from the Great War, with just 68 shells. Paradoxically, Paris is filled with Germans. There are the SS and Gestapo troops, and hordes of soldiers whose units have been routed by the Allies, wandering around the capital, looking for any way they can to head east and go home. Von Scholtitz is convinced that the Allies' next objective is Paris. If not in the next few days, then within a week, at most. In fact, they're already in Le Mans, after an intrepid breakthrough by the 2nd Armored Division, led by General Leclerc. Leclerc, a familiar name in occupied France for the past 2 years. His division is still part of Patton's Third Army, but he has promised he and his men will be the first to enter Paris. Eight days previously, on landing in France, he recorded this brief declaration for the BBC. The hour of liberation is approaching. I've returned to French soil at the head of an armored division to take part in it. I promise you, the tricolour flag will once again fly over Paris. Le Mans to Paris, 185 kilometers, and practically no serious German defenses between the two. Having taken stock of the situation, the general goes to the headquarters of SS Gruppenführer Auberg in the Avenue Foch. Karl Auberg, the butcher of Paris, is the supreme chief of the German police force for all of France. The fanatical SS and the sinister Gestapo. The full force of German repression is at his command. What von Scholtitz wants is to integrate the SS into the Wehrmacht combat units, which will soon have to defend Paris.
I was in Berlin until yesterday.
And what can I do for you?
As you can see in my orders, as of today, the Führer grants me the prerogatives of the commander of a stronghold under siege.
Yes, I can see that.
Which is indeed our situation. We are a stronghold under siege. But I have nothing to defend it with. You, on the other hand, have men who are armed, experienced, and determined. The equivalent of 4 regiments. I want them to fight under the orders of the Wehrmacht, immediately.
The answer is no, General. The SS are the only effective force against traitors, and defeat is hiding among the ranks of our army. There is no authority superior to the SS.
I imagine, Herr Gruppenführer, that is your final decision?
Final.
All that von Scholtitz can hope for is that Auberg and his SS men can prevent acts of sabotage by the resistance. The resistance. For the general, they're a bunch of terrorists, a gang of assassins with no sense of honor. This is a mistake. In 4 years of occupation, the resistance has become a veritable shadow army made up of a number of different groups called Libération, Combat, Franc-Tireur, the National Resistance Front or the National Liberation Front. They don't know one another and come from all political horizons, from the revolutionary left to the Bonapartist right. But in 1943, despite their differences, together they created the Conseil National de la Résistance, the CNR. With the CNR, the resistance becomes a real military force. It coordinates movements, organizes underground activity, the maquis, and provides London with vital information. In early 1944, the CNR has a clandestine army of up to 100,000 men under the common banner of the FFI, Force Française de l'Intérieur. But with the prospect of victory come political rivalries that affect the resistance's actions. A new republic will soon have to be constructed. But which force will impose its views over the others? The Gaullists at the helm of the provisional government in Algiers, or the communists, largely dominant within the FFI? For the moment, however, Germany is still very present, and the FFI forces are champing at the bit, waiting for the order for general insurrection. De Gaulle sends a military delegate to the CNR in Paris to cool things down. He is just 29 years old, but is already a brigadier general, the youngest since the First Empire, and his name is Jacques Delmas, known as Chabon. Chabon is convinced that a premature uprising will lead to a bloodbath, and that generalized insurrection would play into the communist hands, as they would be at the forefront and have power within their reach. His opposite number is a communist ardently advocating just such immediate insurrection, Colonel Raoul, real name Henri Tanguy. A former metal worker, he joined the Communist Party at the age of 17. In June 1944, the CNR makes him a colonel and appoints him as commander of the FFI forces in the Paris area. He's a powerful man. It is whispered that he could raise more than 20,000 men in just a few hours. Chabon is aware that he cannot contain the clandestine army's desire for open warfare for much longer. On July 27th, he leaves Paris for Lyon, where he takes a plane from a secret airstrip, heading for London. In England, Chabon repeats to anyone who'll listen that the Allies must lead an urgent offensive against Paris. But no one hears him. For Dwight Eisenhower, the supreme commander of the Allied forces on the Western Front, the primary objective is not to free Paris, but to crush Nazi Germany. He wants to reach the Rhine as soon as possible, before winter, and speed on towards Berlin. On the Normandy front, the Allies have succeeded in encircling the 7th German Army within a 20 by 40 kilometer area south of Caen. The Wehrmacht counterattacks. Fighting is brutal and violent. The Liberators' advance is temporarily halted. Von Scholtitz profits from the respite to reorganize his forces. He integrates his administrative staff into his combat units. He requisitions all soldiers returning from Normandy without a unit, and 17 panzers heading for the front. He now has almost 20,000 men prepared for battle. Raoul Tanguy is also organizing his forces. He has some 42,000 men in the capital and the same number in the suburbs. But what is lacking is weapons. Since July, sabotage operations have intensified, disrupting the Germans' communications and supplies. Executions targeting members of the milice or collaborators have also become more widespread. In his General Order No. 3, Colonel Raoul writes,
"Department and sector heads should consider themselves mobilized at every hour of the day and night. It is possible that popular insurrection movements break out. The FFI should support them with all their might."
Raoul Nordling has been in touch with the resistance for some time. He believes the Nazis will be defeated, and he too wants to prepare for post-war peace. His contacts have revealed that among the prisoners held in the Fresnes prison are a number of leading resistance members that the Germans have so far not identified, and whom the CNR would like to see released before insurrection. But they have to act quickly, very quickly. The Paris railway workers are on strike. Rail traffic is disrupted. The German soldiers' nervousness is increasingly palpable, and the Parisians' hostility more and more evident. Insurrection is imminent, with or without the Allies. This morning, General von Scholtitz has an appointment with SS Standartenführer Neifeind, the Gestapo's chief torturer.
Rumor has it that the Allies will soon be in Paris.
And you want to know if this is true? I can tell you that the valiant soldiers of the Wehrmacht will repel the invaders with no difficulty, as they're vastly superior to them in every way. Would you believe me?
I don't know, General.
No, you wouldn't believe me. So I shall tell you the truth. In a few days, perhaps a few hours, Paris will be surrounded. We can fight and die, or we can surrender. The result will be the same. The Allies will take the city.
In that case, I must leave the city as soon as possible.
Why? Are the SS not supposed to fight?
It's not that, General. But we must in no case reveal what has happened here over the past 4 years.
The torturer fears torture. Well, my dear Neifeind, I can do nothing for you. I think you will have to deal with the Americans. Or present your excuses to the French communists.
During the night following this edifying discussion, Neifeind slips away like a thief towards Germany, taking 1,200 members of the Paris Gestapo with him. In the afternoon of August 14th, General von Scholtitz parades his men around Paris to a musical fanfare. A demonstration of force designed to quell the population's growing unrest. But in the crowd of bystanders, jeers and mocking can be heard, insults even here and there. Von Scholtitz observes the scene from the windows of his HQ at the Hotel Meurice.
They're not afraid anymore.
As the Germans parade, Colonel Raoul Nordling meets the leaders of the three main resistance movements in the Paris police, in the back room of a cafe in Levallois-Perret. They've had enough of the German authorities' bullying. They want to go on strike. They want to be the first Parisians to openly rebel. Raoul Nordling now knows the 7,000 Paris police officers will join the insurrection. 7,000 armed men, when the FFI desperately need weapons. It's unhoped for. Here in the back room of a suburban cafe, he draws up the tract that will at last tip Paris over the edge into armed revolt.
Appeal to the Paris police. The hour of liberation has sounded. You must take part in no further operations to maintain order for the enemy. You will refuse to participate in the arrest of patriots, in searches, roadblocks, identity checks, prison surveillance, etc. You will help the FFI eliminate all those who continue to serve the enemy in this manner. Signed, Commander of the Paris region for the FFI.
On the 14th, von Scholtitz receives new orders from the Führer himself. All Paris's industrial installations have to be destroyed. An explosives commander has been sent from Berlin to organize the operations. Technical advisors who inform von Scholtitz of the imminent arrival of his old friend Karl. Karl, the nickname for a giant self-propelled mortar, the biggest ever built. There were just 6 of them, capable of firing shells loaded with 2,200 kilos of explosives over 6 kilometers. With each shot, a whole neighborhood could be reduced to rubble. Von Scholtitz, at that very moment, is faced with the most dramatic decision in his whole career. Should he obey? In military terms, the destruction ordered by Hitler will change nothing, but will only push the population into outright rebellion. Should he disobey? he will be shot and his family will be deported, perhaps executed. Whatever he does, he knows the war will be lost for Germany. He has to save himself and his loved ones, honorably if possible. But time is running against him. During the night of the 14th to the 15th of August 1944, the FFI and 3 American divisions land in Provence. In just a few hours, the German defenses collapse. On the morning of the 15th, almost all the law and order forces in Paris are on strike. Police and gendarmes show up at work in civilian clothes. They occupy the premises and wait. Insurrection is imminent. Everyone can feel it. That morning, von Choltitz had received orders to destroy the aqueducts carrying drinking water and blow up the region's electric power stations. The aim being to slow down the Allied advance. At midday, he receives further orders directly from Hitler, transmitted by radio from Berlin. All the bridges in Paris are to be destroyed, as well as around 40 more in the suburbs. How can he defend the city if he can't cross the River Seine? 300 men are assigned to him, experts in sabotage and demolition. For the moment, these men are holding stocks of explosives in the National Assembly. If he is to apply these orders, the general will be guilty of a despicable war crime. If he doesn't apply them, he's condemning his own family to death. At the Hôtel Meurice, the technical team leader is optimistic. He assures the general he is in a position to destroy all of Paris. Not only the industrial facilities and the bridges, but also the stations, the ministries, the monuments, the museums and churches. Everything that embodies the history of the city, of France and its past glory, annihilated.
But why? Do you think there are factories hidden beneath Notre Dame? Or a power station concealed under the Louvre Museum? Just do what you're here to do. I'm in command. You follow orders. And take no unwarranted initiatives.
The Allies' encirclement operation launched in Normandy a few days earlier is taking effect. Falaise has already fallen. The vice is tightening. The German troops are fleeing, reeling in panic, with the Americans hot on their heels. Raoul Nordling has a meeting with a man his contacts have defined as the chief. He's about to meet Sarah, alias Alexandre Paradis. He's the metropolitan delegate for the government in Algiers, appointed this very morning by General de Gaulle himself. Paradis is not a soldier. He's an intellectual, a politician. De Gaulle has entrusted him with imagining a new state organization after the liberation. Nordling tells him of his attempts to free civilians imprisoned by the Germans. He fears that if insurrection breaks out, the SS will massacre all the political prisoners still being held in the local prisons. Can the resistance help? Can they free them using armed force? No, says Paradis, we don't have the resources. Nordling has to continue his negotiations with the Germans. At that moment, a train carrying Parisian deportees leaves for Germany, the last of a long series. Jacques Chabon-Delmas has returned from London. He informs the CNR members of de Gaulle's latest instructions. A general uprising in Paris should not be triggered until the Allies attack the city, which should occur at best in 3 weeks' time. But the people won't hold back that long, he's told. Paradis pleads for patience. It's finally decided not to decide anything. Chabon draws up a report sent by radio to de Gaulle in London. Found situation in Paris to be tense. Police disappearance through strike will only facilitate insurrection. Personal impression, atmosphere very heavy. Consequently, military context permitting, intervention with allies necessary to demand swift occupation of Paris. At the same time, Consul Nordling is with the German forces commander, Dietrich von Schultitz. Nordling notes that the general appears to be rather less haughty. He looks worried, tormented even.
General, you have to release all the civilian prisoners. 6,000 people are imprisoned in Drancy, Fresnes, La Santé, Pithiviers. They're innocent. The prisoners we're talking about were not caught with guns in their hands. They were denounced or arrested in roundups and have never been tried.
Civilian prisoners are of no concern to me. I'm not interested.
But, General...
No, no! No, I can't!
General? Consul? General, I will have left the city by tomorrow morning. The Reich's greater cause summons me back to Berlin. From now on, you're on your own to maintain order in Paris.
The Reich's greater cause. Hmm? Then go, Oberg. We shall die very well without you. Oberg, one moment, if you please. Do you see any objection to me releasing the political prisoners held in Paris?
I really don't care.
Very well. If nothing in the Reich's greater cause stands in the way of it, you can go to the devil. Consul, as I was saying, I'm a soldier. And a soldier does not imprison civilians. I shall therefore draw up a release order for you, which will enable you to negotiate with those responsible for holding the prisoners. I trust you will act with all due haste. I fear that the major to whom you must transmit this letter may also be called upon to decamp in the name of the Reich's greater cause.
All political prisoners, both in Paris and the surrounding area, as well as all evacuation trains with no exceptions, are to be placed under the authority of the Consul General of Sweden, Mr. Raoul Nordling, and entrusted to the surveillance of the French Red Cross.
The Swedish consul needed all his powers of diplomacy to convince the jailers at Fresnes, La Santé, and particularly in Drancy, to apply the order. But ultimately, thanks to Raoul Nordling's determination, almost 4,000 people avoided deportation. On the morning of August 18th, Paris wakes up to a strange atmosphere. On the walls around the city, the first posters of a new type are appearing.
Order for general mobilization. In every company, street, quarter, district, and arrondissement, men must organize 8-man combat groups and appoint a sergeant. Capture weapons from the Germans and from Dalland's milice. Use any means available to hurt the enemy. Knives, incendiary bombs, tire slashing, stretched cables, fallen trees, shears, spanners, etc. Commander of the FFI for the Seine, Seine-et-Oise, and Seine-et-Marne departments. Signed, Colonel Raoul.
"26 meters below the bronze lion statue in the Place d'Enfer Rochereau, Colonel Raoul Tanguy sets up his operational HQ in an anti-aircraft shelter built before the war. It's a vast complex of rooms, connected to the catacombs, the sewers, and the metro, with the luxury of being linked with other shelters via an independent telephone network the Germans cannot tap. The d'Enfer HQ will be the nerve center for insurrection. The uprising has already begun. That morning, 2,000 police officers took over the prefecture building and the weapons held there. They raised the French flag on the roof, and resolutely sang the Marseillaise in 2000-part harmony. Raoul Nordling arrived at 9 o'clock in uniform. In fact, a simple jacket left over from the war in Spain, on which his wife has sewn 5 gold braids. From a vehicle parked in the prefecture courtyard, he informs the policeman, "In the name of the Provisional Government of the French Republic, I am taking command of operations." He sends 1,500 men to take possession of the local police stations. With the 500 remaining, he barricades the windows and improvises roadblocks at the gates. He places snipers on the roof. From this point on, any German venturing onto the Ile de la Cité will be shot. As Raoul Nordling organizes the defense of the rebel prefecture, Consul Nordling drives past the building. He sees armed men at the windows. He looks up at the red, white and blue flag flying above. On his way back to the Swedish consulate, Nordling stops in front of the Hotel Meurice. He's probably the only man in Paris to have a view of the full picture. He wants to know how General von Scholtitz is going to react. Nordling senses that the rather stiff Prussian general, as staid and straight-laced in his uniform as he is in his soldierly principles, is not a despicable man, and that he will refuse to apply Hitler's orders.
If it doesn't stop, I shall be merciless. I have no choice. I have orders, Nordling. Orders that are terrible. I have to destroy Paris before we pull out.
General, they have the people behind them. And their first target is the Vichy government. The prefecture is Vichy. In effect, this revolt is almost an internal French affair.
They're shooting at us, Nordling. At my soldiers. Is that your revolt against Vichy? The worst thing is, I like the French. They're perfectly likable. And now here I am in this magnificent city with the likable French citizens who are killing my soldiers. What's going to happen, Nordling? What will become of us if I have to destroy Paris?
Maybe if there were leaders among your adversaries with whom you could negotiate. Perhaps in that case we could find some kind of modus vivendi.
Do you think so, Nordling? So do your job. You're a diplomat, aren't you? If you don't want me to hit hard, then talk to them.
In the late afternoon, Nordling is in contact with the prefecture. The insurgents are running out of ammunition. If the Germans attack again, they'll have to surrender. The situation is desperate. Immediately, the Swedish consul transmits a truce proposal to von Scholtitz. Within an hour, he has the general's response in his hands.
The Commander-General grants the insurgents a truce between 20:55 and 21:50 this evening. He will not commit reprisals and will agree to evaluate the situation with the resistance authorities and to envisage a modus vivendi for the days to come.
All through the night, Nordling continues to negotiate. To the resistance leaders, he says the idea for the truce came from von Scholtitz. To von Scholtitz, that it came from the resistance. Shortly before dawn, Nordling can finally inform von Scholtitz of the conditions demanded by the CNR.
Captured FFI will be regarded as prisoners of war. The Germans will not prevent firemen from putting out fires. In the case of a truce violation by the French, the general will differentiate between isolated acts and concerted attacks.
A further condition is added. Resistance representatives refuse any direct contact with the Germans. Nordling will be their intermediary. The weather is overcast on the morning of Sunday, August 20th, when the Parisians wake up. Officially, The truce is now in place. But Raoul Nordling and the military chiefs have been sidelined from the negotiations. They refuse the ceasefire. The CNR no longer controls its troops. Shots are fired and skirmishes break out sporadically. Von Scholtitz is also harried by his forces. SS units pushed back to Paris by the Allies' advance perpetrate atrocities in the suburbs. Despite the truce, 26 FFI combatants are executed at the Château de Vincennes. And yet, during the day, vehicles with loudspeakers broadcast the announcement in the streets.
Due to the promise made by the German commander not to attack public buildings, the CNR requests that you cease fire against the Germans until Paris has been completely evacuated. The population should remain calm and not stay in the streets.
The Parisians can barely believe their ears. The Germans are going to leave. Throughout the city, French flags appear at windows. The FFI are now operating everywhere in the city. They've taken control of the city hall without a fight. Alexandre Parodi sets out to meet the Paris resistance leaders. At about 3 p.m., he's arrested at a German checkpoint in Boulevard Saint-Germain. In the car, the soldiers discover his FFI armband and tracts with the Cross of Lorraine on them. After 2 hours of interrogation, he's taken to von Scholtitz at 5 o'clock.
You travel around by car in Paris? With this? And this?
Nordling is informed and hurries to the Hotel Meurice.
You're terrorists. Nordling. For heaven's sake, take him with you before I send him off to the firing squad. Minister, just a moment. Are you an officer?
Captain, Army Reserve.
Fine. So, between officers, let's shake hands.
Parodi is justifiably both scornful and wary. If the Allies don't arrive soon, von Scholtitz will crush the Paris uprising. Raoul Nordling seeks a last-ditch solution. He sends a man he can trust, Major Gaulle, to the front. He is certain that Leclerc will not let Paris fall, even if he has to disobey orders. At the moment Gaulle leaves the capital, Leclerc is enraged, frustrated and impatient. He's still 200 kilometers from Paris, while certain American units are within 20. He's waiting for Eisenhower's order to advance on the capital, but it doesn't come. No matter. If he has to, he'll go without the order. In fact, he's already sent Colonel Biot on ahead with a detachment of 20 tanks. In the first free newspapers distributed by the FFI, the Parisians discover a list of the buildings occupied by the resistance. They anxiously scour lists of the casualties, or study the recipe for a Molotov cocktail, or the best way to build a barricade. And with the newspapers, Raoul Nordling's latest directives are passed around.
All the people of Paris, men, women, and children, are to build barricades and cut down trees along the avenues. Every small street must be partially blocked by chicanes. Everyone to the barricades. And the order is, everyone kill a Kraut. No quarter for the assassins.
Some of the German units retreating from Normandy have come to reinforce the garrison in Paris, which now has 50 more tanks. In the early afternoon, Nordling receives a CNR representative at the Swedish embassy.
We have no more ammunition. Leclerc has to come. You're a diplomat. Get us through the German lines.
Nordling agrees. Once again, he heads for the Hotel Meurice.
What do you want me to do? This morning, General Speidel communicated the Führer's latest orders. I have to leave Paris in ruins, his exact words, and carry out pitiless reprisals against the population. I have to defend the city to the end, and if necessary, perish in the rubble.
What did you reply?
That I have placed 3 tons of explosives beneath Notre Dame and 5 under the Louvre. That the Madeleine, Sacré-Cœur and the Palais Royal are ready to be blown up. And that the Eiffel Tower will make an excellent anti-tank barrier when demolished.
You're not serious, General.
Obviously, I'm not serious. But that's the plan that's been concocted by the specialists from Berlin. And they envisage between 400 and 500,000 civilian victims. They apologize for the approximate nature of the figures. I'd be better off standing in the middle of a bridge when they blow it up.
I have a proposition for you.
Huh? Another truce?
Give me an Ausweis and I shall go and inform the Americans of the situation.
You're joking.
Not at all. If they come rapidly and in numbers, nobody could reproach you for not having the time to execute these despicable orders.
I shall not surrender without a fight.
Obviously.
And I shall only surrender to a superior officer from a regular Allied army unit.
That goes without saying.
Go ahead, Nordling. And may you succeed.
As he leaves the meeting with von Scholtitz, Raoul Nordling suffers a heart attack. Obliged to rest, he sends his brother to meet General Leclerc. And meet him he will. But Major Gaulle, sent by Roltongi 2 days previously, has beaten him to it. On August 22nd, he's with Leclerc at an aerodrome in Le Mans. Leclerc shows him the order he has received. 3 words de Gaulle has convinced Eisenhower to pronounce: rush to Paris. In Berlin, patience is running out. A telephone call directly from Hitler's chief of staff catches von Scholtitz unawares. As he replies, he can hear constant gunfire from the Ile de la Cité and around the Louvre. No, he hasn't left the city. Yes, things are calm. Yes, everything is under control. Of course, he will apply the Führer's orders for destruction. Hitler orders a deluge of V2s to be fired in addition to the Luftwaffe's carpet bombing. The V2 is the very first ballistic missile, a rocket carrying almost 800 kilos of explosives, more than 300 kilometers at supersonic speed. Dozens of them are ready to be launched against London from Belgium and Holland. Aim them at Paris, screams Hitler in his bunker. Von Scholtitz refuses. He doesn't accept that the German soldiers still fighting in the city should be sacrificed to Hitler's madness. Hitler himself can rant into the telephone, "Brennt Paris? Is Paris burning?" But once more, Paris has been saved from annihilation. Leclerc and his troops have waged a fierce tank battle at the Croix de Berny and met with die-hard German resistance around the Fresnes prison and at Bourg-la-Reine. In the late afternoon, they're still fighting close to Antony. The previous evening, de Gaulle joined Leclerc in Rambouillet as he was preparing the route to Paris with his officers. He listened as Leclerc gave his orders, looked at him for a moment, and simply said, "You are lucky." That morning, Leclerc sent a small reconnaissance plane to fly over the city. The pilot swooped down over the prefecture and threw a message to the insurgents. "General Leclerc told me to tell you, hold on, we're on our way." Still held down by German fire, Leclerc orders one of his captains to speed towards the capital. The Germans have to see their tanks in Paris to break their morale. The captain's name is Raoul Nordling. One of Leclerc's oldest comrades in arms, he's leading the 9th Chad Infantry Company, mostly made up of Spaniards, largely communists and anarchists, veterans of the Spanish Civil War. They would be the first Allied soldiers to enter Paris. Nordling, his 3 tanks and 150 men don't encounter a single German soldier between Antony and Paris City Hall. But as they pass, the Parisians hit the streets, waving flags, cheering and kissing the men, climbing on their tanks, all bearing a cross of Lorraine and a French name on the side. Montmirail, Romilly, Champaubert, the names of 3 of Napoleon's victories against the Prussians. Nordling reaches City Hall at 9:22 p.m. with a young girl in a traditional Alsatian costume sitting on the bonnet of his Jeep. The bells in every church in Paris are ringing out to welcome Leclerc's men. Leclerc's division is now in the capital. Along with Raoul Tongi's FFI, it is eliminating the Germans' armed outposts hidden throughout the city. There's fierce fighting at the National Assembly and the Senate building. In Avenue Kléber, Battalion Chief Massu orders cannon fire against the Hotel Majestic, where 300 German soldiers are holed up. In the Rue des Archives, Captain Nordling and the 9th are caught in the crossfire from machine gun posts hidden in apartment buildings. They can't reach the Place de la République, which is mined. Everywhere, German snipers wreak havoc, firing down from the rooftops. In the Place de la Concorde, Leclerc's Sherman tanks and the German panzers face off from close range. But the Rue de Rivoli sees the most ferocious fighting. Along the arcades, Leclerc's infantrymen make slow progress from Châtelet, accompanied by the FFI. The Germans have set up barricades around the Hôtel Meurice and shower the street in machine gun bullets. At 12:45, an ultimatum is sent to von Scholtitz. You have half an hour to cease all resistance, or the German garrison will be completely exterminated. The general replies, "I don't accept ultimatums." At last, the French soldiers are in the hotel. A young FFI soldier is first on the scene. Later, in his memoirs, von Scholtitz would recount the event.
The civilian pointed his gun at me and repeated several times, "Sprechen Deutsch? Sprechen Deutsch?" I calmly replied, "No doubt, better than you do." As this occurred, a French officer entered the room and realized what was happening. He grabbed the civilian by the arm and dismissed him. He then raised his hand to his cap and asked me in French, "General, are you ready to cease fighting?" I replied, "Yes, I am."
Von Scholtitz is taken by jeep to meet Leclerc and sign the surrender. Leclerc asks him tersely, "Are you General von Scholtitz?" The German replies that he is. Von Scholtitz wants his adjutant to negotiate the terms of surrender. Leclerc refuses. "You are the defeated general. You sign." Von Scholtitz doesn't protest. Colonel Raoul Tongi demands that he countersign the document in the name of the FFI. Leclerc refuses. He alone represents the Free French forces. Von Scholtitz signs the act of surrender. Leclerc signs after him. Raoul Tongi will finally get his signature on the document, but only the next day. The Battle of Paris is officially over. At the Montparnasse station, a few minutes later, the official act of the German surrender is in de Gaulle's hands. Around him for the first time are all the leaders of the Paris insurrection, the CNR members, Leclerc and his officers. The next day, among a delirious crowd, General de Gaulle marches along the Champs-Élysées, accompanied by Leclerc and members of the provisional French government. The communists are well represented. Laval, Pétain, and the principal members of the Vichy government are taken to Germany. The liberation of Paris, by the joint efforts of every Free French movement and by the inhabitants themselves, conferred de Gaulle with an incontestable legitimacy. Roosevelt can no longer ignore him, and France will be counted among the victors. As they parade along the Champs-Élysées, Georges Bidault whispers in de Gaulle's ear, "General, what a triumph." De Gaulle replies, "Yes, but what a shambles." The Luftwaffe did finally bomb Paris randomly on the nights of the 26th and 27th. 3,200 German soldiers were killed in the Battle of Paris. 14,800 were captured. The 2nd Armored Division lost 28 officers and 600 soldiers. Estimates of casualties in the FFI ranks and among civilians range from 1,500 to 7,000. This film is dedicated to their memory.